It's a bit heckling, isn't it?
I've got to start again now. Ladies and gents, welcome and thank you all for coming today. We're here to celebrate the life of my dad, Brian, who passed 15th of March at Hull Infirmary. He was 83 years old. He was the husband of my mum, Denise, who called him Abby, and she was in turn affectionately known as Niecy. He was dad to Mandy, myself and Shelley, granddad to Candice and Freddie, and great-granddad to Arthur, Alfred and Albert. The purpose of this get-together is to acknowledge everything for which my dad was, to recall those times we spent together in love and enjoyment, and to remember together all the happy times we shared. It's always a sad time when we lose someone close to us, but today we have a chance to celebrate my dad's life, to remember what it was that you all loved about having me in your lives, how he loved us, and how we in turn loved him, and the times we shared with him. And I know that Dad wouldn't want us to be sad today. So I would like us all to take time to remember my dad, Abby, Bud, Dodgy Grandad, Uncle Bri, Uncle Abby, our Bri, Dodgy Bri, with happiness and celebrate his life. Dad was born 11th of August 1939. That's not him on the right. No. His parents were Kenneth and Phyllis. Kenneth and Phyllis also had a daughter, so Dad had a younger sister, Pauline. Auntie Pauline, where the bonny bairns? Auntie Pauline has sent me a lovely piece about my dad, which I'm going to read for you now. I won't do the accent. Brothers make you who you are. The rough and tumble takes your edges off. Their slight hidden love is plain to see. A brother is there to help us be confident when timid, to be strong when weak, and fearless when scared. He is an inspiration and his memory will be in our thoughts forever. Hi, I greet you all from South Africa. I am Pauline, Paul as Brian would call me, Brian's one and only sister. If I were to think out loud, I'd say what makes a brother-sister relationship one of a kind is the way one remembers the other one when they are no longer in the same realm. When I think about Brian, I remember his big smile, how he made me laugh, and I would hear Niecy shouting in the background, "Paul, don't believe a word he says!" And she would start laughing too. We spoke often on the phone, but not as much as we should have. Our conversations normally centred around our families, and often our lives growing up. Brian would ask, "Do you remember?" And then we would reminisce of past years. Growing up in our younger days, we played and fought and drove Mum to distraction, as all kids do. We accused each other of being her favourite. He would tease and I would whine. After all, he was my big brother and I his little sister. And that's what they would do, as I'm sure you can all relate. I remember that one day he picked me up on his motorbike from Auntie Lily's house in Sutton. He was taking me to visit Niecy at the pub. This was before they were married. This day in particular was a very windy day, so I was dressed up warm with my beanie and scarf. We were approaching the main intersection going onto Beverley Road and he had started slowing down. Before I knew it, my scarf was caught up in the back wheel. I was pulling on him to stop. Fortunately, he felt me pulling and looked around, stopped, unwrapped my scarf, and we carried on to the pub. At the time it was frightening, but we had a good laugh about it later. You asked for something quirky. It's true, I did. How many sisters can boast that they went on honeymoon with their brother and sister-in-law? Yes, they came back on the Sunday and told me to pack a bag, that I was going to Bridlington with them for the rest of the holiday in caravan. I often wondered why they took me to the pub on the night and bought me vodka and lime to make me sleep. I have so many wonderful memories of my brother, too many to bore you with. He was loving, kind, caring and my protector. I will miss him terribly. Brian, thank you for being my big brother. I will always love you and know you'll be watching from up above. I'd like to thank Auntie Pauline for those beautiful memories and words. Sadly, both Brian and Pauline's parents passed away early in their life, Kenneth passing before Phyllis. The early black and white photos you see today were sent by Auntie Pauline last year and were the first pictures I'd ever seen of grandparents I never knew and of Dad and Auntie Pauline as kids. Bonnie pair. In his teens, Dad had an apprenticeship as an electrician and played the bugle in the cadets. This is where he met Uncle Tony and they became firm friends. It was after cadets one night that Uncle Tony brought Dad home to meet the family. Sparks must have flown, as after the first time Mum saw Dad, she told Grandma Rice she was going to marry him. That feeling must have been mutual, as Brian kissed her niece and told her not to tell her brothers. She was 12. Kids were fast in those days, doesn't surprise me. At age 15, Dad was taken in by Grandad and Grandma Rice when Phyllis, Dad's remaining parent, died. Dad moved into the Yorkshireman with the family, Bob, Tony, Vic and Dad all sleeping at one end of the building and Mum at the other end. Grandad Rice would patrol the sleeping arrangements each morning. Apparently, in the night was it? I'll blame my mother, she gave me this info. I don't know how true this is as well, but apparently nobody mentioned this blossoming romance to Grandad.
That's true.
Oh, I forgive you, Mum, sorry. But 6 years later, when Mum turned 18, Dad popped the question, asking Mum, will you engage me? It was a given thing anyway, as Mum had already put a deposit on the ring and chosen it. Fast and easy. So, with engagement concluding and a wedding to plan, there was only one person left to tell. Grandad. Dad asked Grandad Rice for Mum's hand in marriage on a day when Grandad was working down in the cellar. He was so nervous that he carried one of the Pekingese dogs with him in the hope that Grandad wouldn't hit him while he was carrying it. It must have worked out okay though, as that night, Abby and Niecy took Grandma and Grandad to the movies, and Abby and Niecy held hands in front of Grandad. The Pekingese stayed at home and missed the movie. It was happy days. Abby and Niecy married on September 3rd, 1964 at Holy Cross Church, with Pat Nolan and cousin Rob performing maid of honour and best man duties, respectively. Dad maybe should have had a Pekingese on the wedding day, however, as it was late. Mum had to drive around the church a few times. It may have been Dad's passion for fast women that led him to fast cars and becoming a car dealer. Either that or the fact that Dad would spend so much time with the boys, he hardly ever went to college. My Uncle Tony was a bad influence, allegedly. Dad was taken under the wing of Freddie Harris, who saw something in him. As a car dealer, Dad had a talent for wheeling and dealing. He could sell sand to a desert nomad, and he always had a witty one-liner to seal a deal. I just point out for GDPR purposes, that's not Freddie Harris. Things like,
near enough.
Come outside, I'll do your part X on a Robin Reliant. Isn't that a three-wheeler? Usually, yeah. Dad's secret was that he always knew exactly what to say, or more accurately, what not to say, and we all admired him for it. Although opinion is divided on the subject, I seem to recall we ended with a goat in the garden, as Dad had taken it in part X from a pikey. Anyways.
It was supposed to cut the grass before
It was because of Dad's keen attitude and the guidance of Freddie Harris that Dad secured the Datsun and Toyota franchise in the 70s. For GDPR reasons, I have to point out that's not the actual franchise. And Dad involved the family in the business. Grandad would man the forecourt and work the pumps. Uncle Vic transported the cars from the dock. Mum also worked the pumps, preferring to put the fuel straight into the customer's boot instead of the tank. Dad would give jobs to most people who needed them. Colin, Denzel, Spanner, Big Bad Barbara, and even our Susan. I know. The list goes on. Grandma and Grandad often said that although Dad was a bloody good salesman, he was crap at business. Dad once had enough cash to buy a house in Cottingham outright, but felt the business needed 4 new car transporters, much to Mum's annoyance. The car trade didn't do much for Dad's dress sense, however. He must have sold the car to Terry Lightfoot, as every week Dad would come home with some bargain clothes from Terry. For GDPR reasons, that is Terry Lightfoot. Pair of cowboy boots, one size 8, the other size 10. This isn't a joke. 3 identical short-sleeve shirts, like the one I'm wearing today, with the same stripe pattern on, but in different colours. All had been folded in half in the shop window, and all had one side sun-bleached, so the light were on one side than the other. They were a bargain. The Datsun and Toyota years were some of Mum and Dad's best times, and Dad did so well that one year, both he and Mum were invited by the regional dealership to go over to Japan for for an all-inclusive, all-paid-for 2-week vacation. With bags packed, passports packed and tickets in hand, Mum decided at boarding the flight she was too scared to get on it. So the trip was off. But it wasn't all bad news, as Japan Airlines reimbursed the value of the tickets by presenting Mum and Dad a bag each. And it was one of these very bags that saw me through school. All my schoolmates had Adidas bags, I had a Japan Airlines bag. Bonus. But as we all know, life can be unpredictable, and our bride was no exception. One day he decided to ditch the carpets for the ocean floor. He traded in his Japan Airlines bag for a wetsuit and oxygen tank. He was determined to explore the deep, dark depths of the sea and became a SAP diver, starting out at Northern Divers. Personally, these were some of my favourite memories. Dad was away 3 weeks at a time, that's not long, but spoilt us when he came home. For the adults, it meant a night at Westfields, but I knew when Dad came home that the next day we were off to Sportscraft to buy me a Tiger One tank model kit that he took off me, built on his own, by himself, even putting a lock on the door so I couldn't get in. Or a ping pong ball bazooka. After the first shot he took off me because I'd have somebody's bloody eye out. Dad had a thing about eyes. You couldn't have a balloon near him for fear of the catastrophic, irreversible damage it might do if it went pop. It was his North Sea diving days that led to his interest in big, multi-dive diving watches, village people moustaches and woolly bears. It's around this time Dad also formed a preference for the action man cup of tea. No more of that lily-livered, pale and insipid standard stuff that he'd never complained about before. It was always, do us an action man cup of tea, will you? I seem to remember also, this was around the time that Mum's chips and old potato-based dishes for that matter became a bit earthy. Dad's last diving trip was in the Persian Gulf, Bahrain or Saudi Arabia somewhere, I can't remember where exactly. But there were warplanes and fighter jets flying over the rig he was stationed on. Dad had a bad feeling about this, so got Mum to contact the diving firm and tell them his granddad was dying and needed to come home ASAP. His granddad had already been deceased a great many number of years. This ploy worked, however, and Dad came home early, safe and sound, without a scratch. Skin as smooth as a baby's bottom, which is more than could be said for his bottom. He came home from that last trip with an even bigger diver's watch, even bigger attache, and for the first time I'd ever seen, a tan. He was that proud of his colour that he wore shorts for what seemed like forever to show off his brown legs. So Dad was a man who wore many hats, and each hat came with its own trials and tribulations, but both he and Mum have demonstrated great strength and resilience. They both have faced many challenges in life, but always emerged stronger and more determined than ever before. Both Mum and Dad thrived on family life, and I remember with great fondness the people and family who came to live at our Ab over the years. Gina, Auntie Pat, Robert, Gary, our Tony, our Susan, Ben, Melody, Candice, and some bloke my dad bumped into at the bar called Bernard. My friends also became family. Pete, Ben, Paddy, Jamie, Darren and Barty were always around, and I think Dad was happy when the house was full. Dad had many things he loved in life. Music. On weekends, Uncle Mike and Auntie Mavis would come round. Mavis would bring a bottle of Galliano, and Mike would bring a bottle of whiskey, some cigars, new hi-fi speakers, an audio kit that looked like it would be more at home at an ACD concert than in the living room. Mike and Dad would then proceed to get comfy, chill out, drink whiskey, smoke like chimneys, and listen to Dire Straits, Pink Floyd and the Eagles. I say listening. I'm positive they were attempting to stress test the walls and the foundations with the sheer amount of volume. The walls were literally shaking. The neighbours must have loved us. This was all valve and vinyl, I must point out. It's the purest thing. You can not only hear, but feel every note played by Marky Knopflers, my dad would say. With the ceiling about to collapse, Mum and Mavis were in the other room, laughing like hatters, smoking like chimneys, and getting shit-faced on Harvey Wallbangers. True story. Even at that early age, I remember how much fun Mavis and Mum seemed to have, probably complaining about husbands or something. Mike and my dad, however, seemed almost comatose in comparison. In a room full of smoke and noise, they both sat with their eyes closed. Whiskey in one hand, a cigar burning holes in the furniture in the other, and they were nodding in time to the music. Only proving they hadn't passed out by opening their eyes simultaneously, looking at each other and nothing. When it was like they both heard, felt and fully appreciated a melodical nuance, and it was just acknowledged. When it was acknowledged, it was back to eyes closed and nodding. No words. I was called upon to pass messages between the two rooms and mediate between the two parties. Mum would tell me to go into the front room, tell Dad to turn it down. Dad wouldn't even open his eyes but would reply, tell her to piss off. I was a kind of surrogate negotiator, if you will. I would invariably surrender and retreat to my room, fearful of a wing-wanger for telling Mum what Dad had said. Animals. Dad loved animals. Cats, dogs, tortoises, goats, ferrets, even a chinchilla sanctuary set up in the living room. Dad loved animals. So one time we had a tortoise, we put it in a box filled with straw for its hibernation. About 3 or 4 years later, we came across the box in the cupboard. It was filled with straw and a skeletonized tortoise. Dad loved animals. One time, when one of the dogs had died, Dad got Mum another one exactly the same. She was livid. What am I going to do with 2 dead dogs? An audience. Oh, that's animals still. Oh. A nap. A nap. Dad loved a nap. No getting around it. And sometimes it was a mutual nap. An audience. Dad loved an audience. Whenever people came round, Dad would take centre stage in front of the fire and regale us with dad jokes. Got the lad an empty cardboard box for Christmas. When he opened it, I told him it was an Action Man deserter. They used to call me the folk singer. Whenever I got my guitar out, everybody went, oh, folk. One of the funniest things I ever saw at Dad's Comedy Lounge was Dad teaching Margaret and Susan how to play spoons. Well, Margaret and Susan are in the audience today, folks, and I've got a couple of spoons. Do you remember spoons? I won't tell anybody about spoons later on. Despite the dad jokes, he did have some good ones. When I was a kid, I asked Dad about his parents. He said, I was brought up by my dad. My mother left before I was born. He also said, my dad was schizophrenic, but he was good people. Both of those jokes were lost on me at that time, but it did come up to date a bit in these later years. Do you know who really gives kids a bad name? Posh and Becks. Kids. Dad loved kids. He had his own way of teaching us. I remember being in Mrs. Crawford's class at St Vincent's, reciting a nursery rhyme Dad had taught me. A nursery rhyme Dad had taught me. It was not last night, but the night before. I don't remember it. I believe Mrs. Crawford called Mum after school to inquire where I'd learnt it. This was before social services came knocking on the door. And who could forget mothers in the garden picking up duff? I know Candice and Freddie know these rhymes, and I'm waiting to hear the grandkids shouting them out. Dad went out of his way to provide for us. I say us, I mean me. Dad bought me an electric guitar when Mum wanted a new kitchen. She was furious. Something to do with a house and 4 car transporters. It's not one thing, it's your mother. Kids, oh, you liked everybody but me. I should have been flicking through these. Do apologise. I'll be hearing from your solicitors in the morning. We're still on kids here. Guitars. For GDPR reasons, that's not the exact guitar, but that's the guitar Dad bought me. See how much of it I hung on to it, it'd be worth these days. So it was this very guitar that led to me being the incredibly talented, accomplished musical virtuoso that stands before you today. Laughing at. Dad told me, though, he was going to sell this guitar because I was spending all my time snogging Tracy Teeling in the living room and not using it. The guitar, that is. Dad said if I wanted to keep the guitar, I had to come with him straight away. I went with him straight away. We arrived at a flat in Branzo where a very flaky old country and western band were auditioning for a guitarist. I got the job but was so disheartened. On the way home, whilst I was drowning in despondency, Dad suggested we pop into Shoulder of Mutton because I have live bands on. There on stage was an 80s band and they were absolutely fucking amazing. I said to Dad, this is the kind of group I want to be in, not some shitty old country and western Delvin Shanklin thing. Dad said at half time, go and ask the singer when they're playing next, as we'd like to come and see him again. I did so. The singer said, we don't know, we're looking for a guitarist. To this day, I don't know if Dad had engineered all that. My mum. But the biggest love of Dad's life was undoubtedly my mum. He could still make her laugh after over 100 years together. Even after an argument, Dad would only have to poke his head around the corner and ask, are we still mates then? And we could still see the love Dad had for Mum, right up until his last moments. That spark that first ignited in the kitchen of the Yorkshireman all those years ago had never faded. This September would mark their 60th wedding anniversary. So, today we remember a man who will be deeply missed but never forgotten. His legacy will live on through his children, his jokes, his family, and all those who had the privilege of knowing him. We take comfort in knowing that he is now at peace, reunited with loved ones who have gone before him. So here's to you, Dad, Grandad, Great-Grandad. You may have been a shockingly good electrician, a cunning car dealer, and a daring deep-sea diver, but most of all, you were a true Dire Straits fan. We'll miss your wit, your charm, and your smile. Rest in peace, dear Dad. We love you. You will be forever missed. Thank you. I did say if anybody wanted to share a story about Dad, you could come up and take the mic. Either that or it's Auntie Joyce's karaoke from now on.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, sorry peeps. We've got a memory table over here. Supposed to do it at the start. Some little memory cards in there. It'd be really nice if you all would just like to jot down a memory of my dad, and we've got a little keepsake for Mum. Okay? Thank you.
Lovely. Don't get me drink now.
Oh, hi, daughter. Yeah. Can you see that? I'm seeing it. Watching it. I was trying to keep away from the machine in case it goes off. Bryn.